Hey, welcome to episode 15 of Worth 1000 Words, where I write a 1000 word short story based on a piece of artwork. If you're new here, my name is Jason and I write fiction. And today is a bit of a special episode. One of my favorite working artists, Simon Stalenhag from Sweden, has created a new Kickstarter. And as you can see by my bookshelf, I'm a fan. I have a few of his books. I even have the tabletop role playing game, and here's a piece of his artwork. And what I like most about his artwork is it's bucolic and it's nostalgic, at least for me. So we have all these sci-fi artists who tend to create artwork that exists within that specific time period. And while Simon's does, it's an alternate history that primarily takes place in the 1980s, where we have these great imagery of kids with robot arms or discovering mysterious artifacts, all set against a small town backdrop. And so it provides this really nice, cozy contrast, I think, that is really a unique style, and you don't see that much. And he's amassed quite the following. I mean, there's even an Amazon TV show based off his work, which is really good. Probably my favorite Amazon TV show. I highly suggest you watch it if you haven't seen it. Now it's an anthology series that is a little bit darker. It's a little bit more emotionally driven. It's not a sci-fi action piece by any means, but I think once again that's what makes his work so special. Is it's different, it's unique, and many people are drawn to it, including myself. So you may be asking, Jason, why have you not done one of his pieces of art yet? Well, so Simon is unique here in that he creates stories with his artwork. So his books contain narrative as well as art. So there's a very descriptive and detailed story there, and one that I'm very familiar with clearly, especially because the role playing game, where it outlines the settings and the history and the timelines very intricately. And so I always felt like I know this story so well. I know the setting pretty well. I felt like it was a bit of a cheat. And not only that, I wanted to explore newer art I haven't seen, or artists I haven't been exposed to yet. But anyway, what I'm getting to is that he has a new Kickstarter for his new book called The Labyrinth. And I feel like it probably exists somewhere in this timeline. It looks like it's in the future of the timeline based on the artwork I've seen. But the best thing is, I don't have any background to it. I don't know what the story is. All I have are a few select pieces he's posted on his Kickstarter page that outline what the world looks like, or at least brief glimpses of it. And it's very classic Simon Stalenhag with a darker twist, a post-apocalyptic twist to it. So I'm gonna take this opportunity before I know any of the stories, and yes, I did back it, so I highly suggest you back it, or at the very least check it out. If you're not familiar with his work, I'll probably be putting a few of his images up here. I almost forgot, but I forgot to mention the music I'm gonna listen to today while I write this. So not only is Simon an artist, but he's also a musician. And so I'm going to be listening to his album called Music for DOS. And if you're old enough like me, if you were born in the 80s and you know what DOS is, then I'm sure you can know what to expect. But I've only listened to the album a few times, and I felt like it was a really great fit. And as always, I suggest that you listen to the music that I listen to while you hear me read the story. I think it really sets the mood, at least for me. All right, with all that out of the way, I know that was a longer than usual intro. Simon, if you ever watch this and you want me to take this video down, if it infringes upon your copyright in any way, I'm happy to do so. But if not, I hope you at least enjoy my story a little bit. All right, well, let's dive deeper into the artwork and see the one I chose. Let's check it out. Today's artwork is, as you know by now, by Simon Stalenhag. And it was not titled, at least not that I saw. And so I had to give it a title of its own, and I chose The Bigger Giant. And that will become apparent once you hear the story. But let's take a look at the artwork. So this is classic Simon Stalenhag. We have a lone figure standing amid this ruined city, and there's some kind of cord attaching this person to something, presumably oxygen, as it looks post-apocalyptic and the air doesn't look so clean. And the distance. This person is just stopped in their tracks, presumably, by witnessing this massive mechanical thing in the distance. So, how did this person get here? What are they doing here? Who is this person? Those are the questions that I had to answer while writing the story, and hopefully I did it justice. I don't know. I'll let you be the judge of that. But either way, it was a lot of fun to be able to write a story based on a work by one of my favorite artists that I didn't know the story to yet. I hope you enjoy it. Let's see what I came up with. The hallway quaked. Plaster or concrete or something else trickled into Alice's hair, and she stopped. Jonas and Andy turned around. Andy, the smaller of the two, shielded his eyes from the harsh overhead lights. "Come on, Alice, I wasn't going to say anything." Jonas sniggered, then masked it with a cough, then a sneeze, which could have been real considering the air was still heavy with particulate. "We're almost there," Andy said. "It'll be cool, promise." Alice nodded and spit out her upper lip, a bad habit she'd been trying to kick, chewing on it, sometimes until it bled. She was embarrassed to admit she liked the taste. Alice followed the two boys, keeping to their shadows so hers wouldn't look so massive, so disgusting, stretching and expanding like it always did when it caught her in the right moment, which was always. She ran her fingertips across the ceiling, noting how much coarser it was than the floor and the walls, where other hands and feet had worn it smooth. It was a secret only she knew. Maybe Carl too, but he hadn't ventured this far in some time, and last she heard he was sick with a red cough, a simple but visual name that she both enjoyed and dreaded. The hallway quaked again, more intensely this time, shaking free loose pieces of the wall. Luckily, Andy and Jonas didn't take advantage of the opportunity to blame her. They were enamored with the game of play knife fighting with two of the chunks that had fallen near them into elongated shapes, close enough to represent knives for two boys of 15. She dreaded 15. She was only 14, but another year could mean another inch or two. Would she even be able to live here anymore? Andy and Jonas rounded a corner painted with orange and white stripes. She squinted to read the stenciled lettering on the corner. Nothing she could decipher. The hallway sloped down, the ceiling staying behind, which afforded Alice more than enough room to stretch her arms, feeling a draft from somewhere on her fingertips. "Told you," one of the boys said from a pale green square of light ahead. The overhead lights had dimmed a while back, either from the height or power. But this light was bright enough to illuminate the floor between her and the boys, which had stretched to dozens of feet. "If he finds out," "He won't, I told you. Sleeps like a rock, and..." "Sure? I mean, there's something, right? There has to be." Alice followed their voices in the light until both became overwhelming. She waited a few seconds, eyes closed, but not too tightly, enough to let some of it through her eyelids. "Oh man." It was Jonas who breathed words more than said them. "This is so cool." "No way," Andy said. "Let me try. No way it'll work on you." Alice opened her eyes to see Jonas slipping off his clothes. Wait, not his clothes. Clothes over his clothes. It was a suit, tethered by a thick cable coiled on the wall. Andy had a helmet on, visor black, polished, reflecting every detail she could see, but bowed and warped, while Jonas kicked off the last of the suit, arms crossed, lips a flat line. "You're not even going to help me?" Andy shook his helmeted head and bent over to pick up the suit. Andy shrugged it on, the legs pooling around him, the arms limp tentacles at his sides. Jonas coughed out laughter, doubling over, pointing as he tried to catch his breath. Andy slumped, then tried futilely to make it fit, folding things over, tucking things in, even attempting to use the hose as a belt and jamming excess behind the large pack that he had donned in a final hope that everything was going to work out. Jonas, his breath found, decided to help his friend. He patted Andy on the back with understanding. Still cool, he said. Maybe they have others. I'm sure they do. They go on. Wait, Andy said, looking at Alice, her too defined reflection looking back at her from the helmet's visor. Andy looked at Jonas, and Jonas reacted like he could see Andy's face through the black glass with an excited, open-mouthed nod. No, Alice said. No way. Andy and Jonas had the suit held upright by the shoulders, happy with the front measurement, then checking her back. She felt the suit's shoulders touch her own, the hem of the pants touch her own. She wanted to protest, but before her mind convinced her mouth to speak, they lowered the helmet over her head. Her breathing quickened, then slowed. There was pressure on her back and the muffled sounds of beeping, which resolved into a steady hum. She wanted to scream. She wanted to punch and kick. She breathed like she never had before. She walked, was led. She didn't fight. Why didn't she? Her vision turned white and then dim to the same clarity her lungs enjoyed. Go on. Look at that. Wait. Their voices took flight, gone. Sagging buildings rose to her sides from a bed of fine ash, sprinkled with dark stones, paving a road that led to windowless cars and, it was even taller. Above the buildings, it could touch the stars if there were any left. Was it from the stars? Jointed appendages held up a broken, spherical mass, bowed in defeat. Tubes hung from its belly. She looked down at her own tube, looked back at the footprint she didn't remember making, looked at the slack. So much farther to go. She walked. More delicious air pumped into her helmet. It tasted so sharp and sweet. The closer she got, the bigger it got, and the smaller she felt. Jonas and Andy's shouts barely broke her reverie, and then she hushed them. Shh. Alice wasn't afraid. She pulled her shoulders back, standing tall, and smiled. This one I had to definitely think about a lot more because telling a story like this, I thought there was different ways to tell it in terms of how many characters we begin with and how many characters we end with. And we know how many characters we end with, or I guess begin with, depending on where I wanted this artwork to represent in the story. But I chose the end. I think it's a very nice kind of climactic image. You know, you have this massive creature. But anyway, so what I did is I thought the person I wanted to establish, or the protagonist, the main character, was going to be the one wearing the suit. And you can see here in the writing that I've established that they're children, or at least teens, which will become more apparent. And right off the bat, I am showing how our main character is large. She's tall, maybe big. I don't really know at this point. But my initial thought was to get her out into this environment. But if you look at the artwork, you can see that it's clearly an adult or someone who is adult sized. And because of Simon Stalenhag's work, I wanted to capture that youthful wonder, even though we're in this post-apocalyptic setting, because that is what a lot of his artwork represents. I think you see children doing things, or families, and they're just among these weird artifacts, like these robots or these odd aircraft. And so I decided to go that way. I thought it would be interesting because I do know that there are 3 characters based on the Kickstarter. I don't know if they're adults or kids yet, but I wanted to steer clear of that completely and just create these new characters, because presumably, you know, humanity is not just relegated to a very small area. It's spread across the world. So created Alice, and Alice is clearly, self-conscious about her height or her size at her age, and then of course being a female, I started out thinking a male, and I was like, well, you know what? I feel like females would be much more self-conscious about things like that. So I switched it to that, and I think it worked out okay. And here we have her. We've established the boys, Andy and Jonas, is 15, and how she's a year younger, but she's dreading 15 because that could mean another inch or two in height, and would she even be able to live here anymore? Which is, it's an ignorant statement, but it really, I think, captures the truism of what self-consciousness feels like. And the funny thing about this story is I was really concerned about having a hard time hitting 1,000 words, but I actually had the opposite problem where I was just cruising along very quickly and ran into an issue where I was way over. Well, actually, I shouldn't say way over, but I hit close to 1,000. I was like, man, I gotta go back and figure some stuff out, maybe remove some stuff. And so I read a great book called Immediate Fiction. I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but he said the way to add scenes is just add characters. And clearly I have 3 characters here. And that really ballooned. Look, I'm almost halfway. I'm almost a 500, which is where I start to, make things turn and the revelation happened and start to head toward the end. But right now we have these 2 boys discovering something. So there is a pivotal moment, and Alice is trailed behind, but she catches up with them eventually because she's going to be the catalyst for this whole thing. That is the turning point. So I did kind of keep it somewhere around 500. I still had no idea how I was going to get to where I was, and if she was going to be a willing participant in donning this suit or reluctant to. And so here we have the 2 boys eagerly trying on this suit that they sneaked in there, and whoever suit this is, it's an adult presumably, based on the size and based on the fact that they are worried about getting caught. But she's kind of standing in the back of the room and observing these 2 while they eagerly put this stuff on, hoping that it's going to work out for them. And again, I mean, this was just such a great opportunity and a fun opportunity for me, I think, to write to this, because not knowing the story was key. I've as I've mentioned, I have his books. I've read them. I'm very familiar with his world, and especially from the tabletop role playing game, which dives pretty deep into the setting. This was, I felt like, my only chance to get something out like this and have it truly feel not influenced by something I'd read or seen. Even though knowing that this was going to be a Simon Stalenhag painting and tone and all of that, and I really tried to do my best to capture that. And here we have the boys. They are, this suit is not fitting them. They're far too small. And Jonas is getting the last laugh, so to speak, when he sees that Andy is even, it's fitting. It's more ill-fitting on him. And he's just struggling, tucking in all the loose pieces. And but anyway, they resign to their fate, and you can see here that their differences or their jealousy is kind of melted away, and they hope that they can find another suit. Maybe they have others. I'm sure they do. And now is the moment. See, I'm at 700 words, so I'm a little above, where Andy notices that maybe Alice will be able to fit in this suit. So her size becomes her self-conscious attribute becomes her a curse or savior. I don't know. We'll find out. And she immediately just says, no, I'm not doing this. And I've never really established what this thing was, but I think that's part of it. These characters already know what this suit does and where it can take them. And I feel like having exposition in there is just a waste of time, and you'll discover it as you read. And here we have Andy and Jonas double checking that the suits fit, or the suit fits, and yes, it does, or at least it appears to. And I added this line of, she wanted to she wanted to fight or protest, but they were already lowering it overhead. And I believe I do go back and seed a little bit of that on, because I thought, if someone's doing this to you, just shoving this suit on you, and you already know, like, this suit affords you the opportunity to go out into this environment, into this apocalyptic environment, it's got to be somewhat scary, right? So I did add that later, and you'll see that in the writing. And now we have the suit over her completely, and she's breathing this clean air, and it's something like she's never felt before, living below ground where the air is stale. And I immediately just threw her out here. I knew, I'm at almost 900 words, and I said, okay, I got to get Alice to this position. I don't have much time. And I knew, this is why I ended early. I knew I had to add a little bit more detail leading up to this. But I'm moving forward regardless, just keeping that in the back of my mind, because, I got to finish it. I got to get to the end. I got to figure out exactly what is happening outside. And I think what I wanted to do is not only make the ending sort of her size, right, being the key to her fitting into this suit, but I wanted to kind of put a positive note on it. And I don't know, maybe you'll think the story's cheesy. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. I wanted her height, or actually the scale of this thing, which you'll see. So now it was even taller above the buildings, and she's referring to this massive robotic thing in the distance. And any fear she had is now being just vanquished, because she's so used to being the biggest one, and now there's something bigger. And, I can just imagine someone who's tall, living below ground, and every ceiling and every doorway is fit for someone who is of average height or shorter. And that's why I seeded those little elements of her touching the ceiling. Now, I don't think she's a giant, okay? She just views herself as a giant. So maybe she's 6 feet, maybe she's 5'10", and that's tall for a woman. So maybe it's something like that, which is adult height. So I know that I did make it feel as though she was giant, like 6'5" or 7 feet. But the only reason I said that is I think our insecurities are just amplified when we think about them ourselves. Like, no one views us the way we view ourselves. And that is why I exaggerated it, because everyone thinks their nose is bigger than it is, or they're fatter than they are, or skinnier than they are, or whatever it may be that they're insecure about, is that it's not as bad as you think it is. And so even though we look at this person standing here before this robot, and she's saying she's not afraid, she pulled her shoulders back, standing tall and smiled. And I was happy with that last line. I didn't change it at all, because it's kind of we have our character that comes to terms and at peace with who she is and how she looks. And even though this is a very bleak and kind of dismal image here, haunting even, I noticed that a lot of Simon Stalenhag's work, there is a positive note to his setting and to the scenes these characters find themselves. Sometimes it's melancholic, sometimes it's sad or tragic, but there are times where he's just trying to capture just the enjoyment of youth, and the wonder and the excitement and the imagination. And so that's what I attempted to do here, kind of bring a somewhat contrasting narrative to this visual, to where you kind of wonder, like, well, how do we get here? And is this creature or this robot alive and going to destroy this person, or what? And I chose that it was going to be a feel-good story of sorts, I guess, where Alice gets what she needs, essentially. And I think that that's important for any character, is not get what they want, but get what they need. And that's what she got. A moment to just kind of shed all of her insecurities and be happy with who she is, and and not be afraid of that anymore. So now I'm at 9:52. I am cruising along. I'm looking for the spots, as I mentioned, where I can lose some words, as because I really want to have like a decent chunk at the end. And I also, one thing I did forget is Jonas and Andy. So, they kind of push her out, presumably into this environment with the suit on, but I didn't really address that. And so down here later, what I do is I have these and I repeat this, right? Because it's right here. So earlier on, when she's far away from them and they're trying the suit on, we get these like snippets of dialogue, these little sound bites. And what I wanted to do is bring it back. And yeah, I said their voices burned away, or their voices took flight, gone. Meaning that they're still there. They're maybe saying, "Wait, hold on, don't go out there. It's dangerous." And she just keeps going. And so like any kind of, the fear has somewhat switched, right? So at first maybe she was reluctant to a degree, or nervous about it, and these guys were excited, and now they're worried for her. So this is where we ended up, and I'm pretty happy with it. I don't know if it's melodramatic anyway, or, and all I can say is that I really hope that I did do justice to Simon's work, because I really admire it, and he's doing something that very few artists do, and cranking out artwork at a blinding pace. And what I love most about his work is that he's not only just creating these independent pieces, but he's creating a world. He's creating an alternate history that has just endless amounts of stories. So this was a fun one for me. And hopefully he doesn't get angry and ask me to take it down for copyright reasons or something. We'll see. I don't know. If he even watches it, maybe I'll get lucky. So yeah, so I'm here going back with the whole thing of addressing the boys and how they're gone now, and that's it. I'm good. I'm at 1,000. Done. I think I'm at 1 hour and 4. Oh, adding a little verbal cue. So what did you think? Cheesy? Good? Did it, for those of you who are familiar with Simon's work, did it do it justice? I hope so. So I think what I learned here is economy of words with multiple characters. And I'll be honest, when I started this, and I believe I say this in the narration of the writing, but I was really concerned that it would be difficult for me to hit 1,000 words. And now you only see one character in the artwork, but I created a couple more to kind of help facilitate the story, and use that last piece because it has just this powerful, iconic look to it. And I thought, what better to be than a climax or conclusion? And so that's what I did, and I had to get rid of 2 characters. And I think if you're a writer, you know that conflict is everything, and that's essentially what I did with the other characters. Is I created, even though the conflict was within Alice herself and her self-image, the boys were clearly feeding into that. She was always anticipating them making fun of her, and I felt like I needed to establish that dynamic a little bit. And you'll notice that I did seed in elements of her touching the ceiling, or her shadow stretching to massive proportions, and how she didn't like that. And so those are little things that you can seed into your work that help establish character, right? Because now it would be very tempting to do something like, say, oh, Alice was 6'2" and 185 pounds or something, and she didn't like the way she looked. But while that's an easy way to go, and I feel like there is a reason you may want to go that way, I always try to weave in the rules of writing craft, and try to better myself as a writer in all of these exercises. Even though I know these aren't like my big works, my novels, or my personal stuff that I'm coming up with my own. So that's one thing I learned. The second is that my stories don't have to be all terrible and dark and tragic. I mean, we have Alice, who had body image issues, as most teenagers do, and those are exaggerated in our own heads. And even though that final image is very creepy looking, or at least daunting for the character who is in the artwork, it's almost as if they're just standing there dumbfounded, frightened of this thing. I kind of wanted to turn this into a positive twist. And I think that is really what Simon's work means to me. Is it's hopeful, it captures the imagination of childhood. And yes, there are tragic things that happen, there's dark things that happen, but they don't all have to be. And I think also his paintings provide us with a great medium to explore these emotional things, where we don't have all of his paintings where there's like guys in jetpacks with laser guns and explosions happening. It's kids walking through a field exploring some weird broken down robot, or having a robot arm with a pack, and just not terrible dark stuff. And so thanks, Simon, for inspiring me to maybe venture a little bit out of my comfort zone to do something a little bit more positive. And if you ever watch this, I hope that I captured some of what you're trying to achieve. At least that's what I get out of your artwork. I get something that has many more layers and levels to it than what appears to be on the surface. All right, now don't forget, back is Kickstarter. I mean, if you love art and you want to support a great artist who's doing something that's truly different, go check it out. And I have a feeling when you just look up his name and look at his massive portfolio of work, you're just going to be as captivated as I am. At least if you're watching these videos, you hold some of the same interests that I do. So at the time of this recording, it's got quite a few days to go, so there's plenty of time. And if you're familiar with Simon Stalenhag's work, comment below. Let me know what you thought of the story. I'd really like to hear an outsider's perspective. And as always, keep reading, keep writing, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye. If you'd like to read this story in its non-video format, check the link in the description. I didn't add anything else. Promise. Thanks again.